And since they've been there, they were kind of getting priced out of their neighborhood. So they're
Yeah, a lot of people are, yeah.
I am calling to order the special council meeting that has been scheduled for this evening, August 7th at 6:00 PM. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, council. Thank you to our audience and to anyone who's participating in our live broadcast of this meeting. Sheila, please call the roll.
Mr. North.
Here.
Ms. Atra.
here.
Ms. Weltman.
Here.
Mr. Daga.
Here.
Mr. Lemay.
Here.
Mr. Gentile.
Here.
Dr. Wong. Here.
Okay. We're here this evening, of course, to discuss on second reading ordinance 2023-06, which we saw at our last meeting. So we're going to be talking about this. There are a lot of related things. So I know Mr. LeMay has passed around some walkability planning documents that I view as all part and parcel of this same conversation. And so we'll be getting to that also. And since we were last together, you've all received an amended ordinance of what you first saw last time. Basically, what we did was add to it the South Woodland, which seemed to be a firm consensus of council. You can correct me if I'm wrong, any council person, to add that as a third street for purposes of the referendum. And also, we corrected a number of a few grammatical issues that had been pointed out during the meeting. And other than that, I'm going to, in many ways, turn this over to council to discuss and see where you want to go with this. Of course, our deadline for this is this week on August 9th by 4 p.m. We have to have an ordinance adopted and submitted to the Board of Elections if council has an intent to get this on the ballot for this November. In a surfeit of caution, I scheduled a meeting for tomorrow night also because we have a planning commission meeting that kicks off in 55 minutes or so. And I didn't want, if council wants to or can conclude this tonight, feel free to do so. I'm not trying to prolong the conversation if you don't feel it necessary. But if it is necessary, then we have, a backup to the conversation that we'll have over the next hour. The meeting for tomorrow night, Dr. Wong has indicated that with her schedule, it would be more comfortable if we could begin it at 7:30. That is fine with me, but I want to get the sense of council. Does anyone have a problem with that?
The only question I have is, didn't this have to be noticed in the newspapers as to the time?
No,
We've been using the
No?
website.
no, we use a website as our public notice.
Oh.
Um,
And there's no time limit or,
No.
Okay.
No, usually we do it the day before, but even if we decide to change it to 7:30, Sheila, we're not going to go that late. You could probably get it, something.
Probably put it out tonight.
We can maybe get it out tonight still, so it's the day before. So
I don't have a problem
No,
with
it's
the
a
time. I
good
just wanted to
question.
make sure that
Good question, but I think we would be fine.
we didn't have a notice issue.
Yeah, we would be fine.
And if there's a cancellation, I can do that also.
Yeah. And, fingers crossed, maybe you'll all be done tonight. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm
Who knows?
hoping.
7:30, I
So-
think, is good, especially considering tomorrow is a
Election
election
day.
day. I think that's
Oh, that's right. There's
Actually,
an
moving it-
election tomorrow.
moving it back may be thoughtful that more could attend if we
Right.
do run over and need that.
Okay, so we will get that notice out, and if necessary, we'll move tomorrow evening to 7:30, Kathy. Good. That sort of concludes my warm-up and a pitch, and I'm going to see if Mr. Lemay, who has some paper, wants to carry on the conversation.
Yeah, so one of the concerns we talked about last week about the timing of putting it on November 7th was, could we develop enough communication materials to get out to the voters so that they are fully informed, and do we have time to do that? So as you all see, and as you know, I sent you yesterday my attempt to do that with a letter that is goes through the history of where we have been, gives some pros and cons as I've heard it at all of these meetings, and then is attached to that is a long FAQ, taking Don's stuff, adding some more, making it shorter, a little bit more, less technical in some places, but adding some things about budget and so forth. So what I've asked in my cover email to all of you is just to give us all assurances that by November 7th, or well in advance of November 7th, so probably by end of August, we would have a document that we could mail out to every resident in the city, which would be a very balanced presentation of all the information that's come up in all these council meetings, as well as the technical information, engineering information, the budget information, maps, diagrams, illustrations, and that was my attempt to start with that. So tonight, I don't want to get into the wordsmithing of the thing, but I wanted to get a sense of all the council members, rather, at least at a high level, is the tone and tenor of what I put together a good basis for moving forward and giving ourselves comfort that we're in accord, roughly in accord at least, and maybe more than that, on the kind of communication we want to get out to our residents. So with that, I'll ask for general comments of council on what I sent out.
Jim, I read it. I thought you did a very thorough job, as you usually do. It's well thought out. I think it touches on many of the things that people want to know about what we need to get out there. And I only had one minor question, and that is the first part refers to these things as sidewalks and then explains why we're not calling them sidewalks. Is there any, Mr. Byron, probably the best to answer this, is there any concern about, because part of the reason for the name change is about liability, do we have to worry about somebody saying, well, you know that these things are the same?
Well, that the issue that I had was just sort of a technical writing issue. In the frequently asked questions, you refer to them.
Yep.
You say we're going to refer to them as trails, but in your letter, you refer to them as sidewalks.
Sidewalks. And I didn't want to bullocks up the letter with lots of going back and forth. I could do that, add a sentence for purposes of put that paragraph in, but it's a lot of words might confuse people from the very first go.
I think
Or I could reference it with a footnote. Or
the value of calling them the recreational trails is that there's legal consequences, and you ought to treat them as such and uniformly use it and say, these look like sidewalks. Why are you calling them recreational trails? That might be in the frequently answered question. But if we're going to, if the intention is to build recreational trails, we ought to uniformly call them that.
for legal purposes, what is the governing document that designates these that someone will look to and say, are these?
Well,
Is it when we pass the construction and say, we're going to build this and we're designating them as?
well, I believe. The issue that is going on the ballot is design, construct, and maintain recreational trails.
But this is advisory.
Well, but
So we're not bound by this, and
when the voters vote on it. Now, if this passes and we proceed to construct these, I will have some legislation that makes clear in our code.
Right.
No sense enacting something if we're not going to do it. So, but we will have documentation about how they're addressed. Right now, I think we have sidewalks in the business district, and theoretically property owners are responsible for the sidewalks. We will make clear that these are not those. and
Yeah.
would make changes in our code.
It would seem to be that would be the quote, the governing document that would,
Well, I think it's fair to say that if the people vote on it, they're voting on recreational trails.
It seems to me that it's the referendum is a short synopsis of basically the spirit of what the survey was. Yes or no, do you want recreational trails?
Yeah.
Otherwise, sometimes in the past thought of as a sidewalk. Do you want those on these three streets? Yes or no? And we can extrapolate and confirm or not the results of the survey information. It would be the obligation of the city in the meanwhile then to get out to people in an effective way, all of the background information as to
Yeah.
what does that mean? When you walk into that voting booth and you see this, abbreviated paragraph or however it gets changed, what does that mean? And hopefully people will be educated at that point to understand what that means. That's our burden
yeah.
to do that.
I'll go ahead and modify the letter, I'll blend it in some way. Steve, you don't have any objection if I'd say that in the opening paragraph, to not confuse people, that these will look like ordinary sidewalks or words to that effect? As long as I designate them as recreational trails, just so people aren't confused from the first sentence.
Understood. Yeah, no, I think, certainly if you pick it up later in the frequently asked question, why are we calling them recreational trails? I think
Yeah.
that's important.
Okay, I will make that first paragraph, reference those and put in some,
Probably a few other places.
put them, yeah. Put in that they're like sidewalk CFAQ number 1 or something like that to make it clear. Fair enough.
I guess the question,
Go ahead.
the question I have is, if this language goes on the ballot, and assume for the sake of discussion, it passes, does that mandate the council to build them, or that just is a additional ammunition for it to move forward in its discussion? I don't believe the referendum said you have to do it. It just says, is the citizenry in support of it?
This is called an advisory election.
Okay,
It is not legally binding.
okay,
on
good.
council.
That's what I wanted to make sure I
And
understood.
one of the issues, of course, would always be if you did have a legally binding, are there budget concerns or things,
Exactly.
timing issues and that sort of thing. So
Okay.
this is purely for the information of the elected officials in making a decision regarding the
That's
issue.
what I want to understand. That's what I thought it was, but,
So one small question or thought, I don't know if we want to, and that's in this document, and I really appreciate this, Jim. I mean, this is great, and it was a lot of work. Just in the interest of having a good civic process, and I think that's why this and the FAQ is really important. There's just one small line that I maybe would consider tweaking, and it's that the city and the residents have on and off discussions about improving walkability for many years. And it's my recollection that it's come up periodically over the years, once or perhaps twice in my lifetime, but that it was rejected by the community. And so I think the language is a little, now that doesn't mean that it's not completely valid to be brought up now, but historically, as a historical reference point, it implies that, it's been an urgent want of the community for a long time, when it was rejected, I think, in a straw poll at one point. So I just think that doesn't lessen the potential desire for it now, but it's just more historically accurate. And, I just kind of like everything that we put out to be, my thought is everything we put out, and I think we probably all agree on this, should be very factual and very, and it is, the FAQ is, and everything you've done is. So, I mean,
That's the only point then. And would
that's
you,
my only, and it doesn't really say that. I mean, it's written so nicely. It's just that as I read it, wasn't sure if somebody would know that. And maybe we could clarify that just in the FAQ. That's another point.
this is,
It's a small thing.
it
but-
is a small thing, and it's just to provide a little bit of context that this doesn't spring from the earth 3 months ago, but
I think I agree with Melanie, though, that it should be clear that this hasn't been a constant discussion. It's been an on and off discussion, and it's been rejected in the past.
Yeah.
I think we want to be as factually accurate as possible.
Yep.
Well, I don't think it's fair to talk about the rejection in the past only, because, and I understand your point, Melanie, I don't, respectfully, I don't agree with it exactly. Because I think there have been, you call it on and off, periodic, there have been discussions about sidewalks over the last 12 years. We've even installed sidewalks over the last
Oh.
12 years. And
Yeah.
we had broader conversations certainly at that point about them. And that's why I would
It
differ a
depends.
bit. Yeah,
Depends
so,
how far back you're going, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
that's the context. So if you're going back 10 years, yes. If you're going back 25 years, I think, and we don't have to say rejected. We could use a more, I actually think that maybe we could use language like just determine that they would not proceed or something like that, the community. Because I think that's what happened when they had that, they did like a
No, if we just
strong-
said in recent years,
or in recent years,
the
that's
city and the
good.
That
residents
should
had
take
had
care of
on
it.
and off.
That's
Is that,
good.
okay.
I just
Done.
think, we should put out just as
That's-
yeah, I
straightforward.
think that's fine. Because when did we do Chagrin Town?
The sidewalks on Chagrin?
Yeah,
Four
Years?
4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
And
2 years
then,
ago.
and then the New Brainerd one was probably
About 4 years ago.
4 years ago. So,
And that wouldn't bias people's decision now. It just
No.
makes sure that everything, I'm just trying to look at everything and make sure anything we put out is just facts.
Do we remember, Melanie, when was the rejection? I mean, I know I've been here 10 years. It was certainly before
No,
that
no,
time.
it was certainly before that. It was not,
It was more than 21 years ago because we've been here 21 years.
Yeah.
yeah,
know
it
that
was,
we didn't
it was in that,
participate.
it was
Okay.
in that realm, like around that.
2003 or 4.
I wouldn't even
1999 or 2000.
and it was such a different project. That was a
Yeah.
10-foot wide
Exactly.
asphalt thing going down people's front lawns. That was a
Maybe the-
really
Oh,
different thing.
exactly. But, just
Well-
as a matter of historical accuracy, so nobody thinks, oh, it was popular, then it
Right.
wasn't. But maybe there was a good reason, and it's a different time.
Right. Well, if that
Maybe
fixes
you
it,
could just say over the last 10 years. or
I
15
said in
years. I'm sorry, go
recent
ahead.
years,
Okay.
we're good with that?
Perfect.
Good. All right, done.
In recent years, we're good.
We're good. Any other high-level comments on?
I had
Jim,
one,
I'd like to just touch on this just for a bit. I will say that my living has been writing, and I write articles about and do scripts about what's happened. And editing is all about leaving things out. That's what the definition of editing is. And I think it's fine, quite frankly. If that's not in there, that is not a deal killer for me.
And I don't mind if it's there, but maybe we put it in the FAQ. Somewhere, I just think that we have to make sure we're representing the correct history.
That's fine.
Um,
And I think Jim's intent here is not to wordsmith this to death right now.
No, and I
so-
didn't want to do that. It's just that one, and that's the only thing that's it.
there's one concept that I am not sure about, and it's on, I number the pages, so it's the second page.
Mhm.
And it says something to the effect that, where is it? Increase their home values
Mhm.
because of sidewalks. I think there's an equal, there's a countervailing thought that sidewalks could reduce the value.
And he does say that
That's
too.
in the next
He does say that.
Right here.
The paragraph.
Yep, it says he covers both.
You could cover that by simply saying the effect it would have.
It's in there right now.
It's already there.
No, I know, but I mean,
Okay.
that covers the whole thing.
Well,
is that
I guess I put them in the same set, put them in
Well,
the
I
same
put them in
place.
exactly the same phraseology in exactly the same way so that it's exactly balanced. Yeah. Kathy?
I really appreciate this document, but I think maybe we should talk about the ordinance a little bit. Since
We're going to get to that, but
Okay.
can we close out on high-level comments on my walkability
No,
plan,
and
proposed mailing?
I do think it's good to balance it though, because it's a good point. We actually don't know the answer to that question. We don't know whether it would increase or decrease the value.
We don't know.
And that's kind of, I don't know, that's a high level thing for us to get into. I don't know that we want to.
This,
No,
the-
no, I-
Or can't.
and we don't, this is reflective of comments people have made and their perceptions, and that's what I'm trying to reflect.
I like that.
So that's,
Okay.
you know,
As long as it's balanced, I like
it
it.
is balanced. I think so.
I'd like to just say for the record that I am fine with this.
Thank you.
Same here.
I like it. One quick comment on 4 and 5, the FAQ. It says in general, the trails will run parallel with this street, but I believe that John mentioned maybe a gentle meander in several places, but I don't know if
That's in the
No,
following
I
sentence.
saw that, but
Yeah, Don's reviewed this. You're okay with that general description?
that's okay. So
Yeah.
it's gonna go parallel unless it needs to go around something.
Right.
And then, number 5, is that 7 supposed to be changed to another number? Is
that was
that
a-
why it's in brackets?
That was a question I had for Don, just that in item number 5, I put the 7 because I think that's the number you said in the public hearing approximately.
Right.
In general.
Yeah.
But is that true for all 3 streets in general?
Really on Shaker, it might be different because there's less space to work with on
So-
Shaker.
So we should put 5 or 6?
I would say it's probably safer to put from 5 to 10 feet. would
5.
be the range.
Okay. That's why I bracketed, just for that reason.
Okay. that's what-
Okay.
What's the process going to be to quote unquote wordsmith this? 'Cause I just got this morning, so I haven't had a chance to.
Right.
Really look
Well,
at
we can think about the best way to.
Yeah,
do
we
that.
have,
Uh-huh.
we don't have to conclude anything. I think tonight, I think we're going to have discussions like this. But to Kathy's point, I think, and Jim's intent, I think tonight was simply what he said, to let council get a sense. Is this doable? I think that the consensus is, yeah, it's pretty doable. It's pretty done. We can, clean it up and tweak it and do all that stuff. But conceptually, I think we have a really nice.
Well, that's what I
and
was
thank Jim.
asking. What will be the process to do that?
I think we'll do it in open session and meeting.
Yeah, and so I have some suggestions. I last meeting, I raised some concerns about timelines on us achieving a November ballot issue, because I was concerned about it. When I saw Jim's document, which along with everyone else, thank you for your time and effort in this. I feel a lot better going forward, having put this together, being able to read this and see this and know what type of information we're looking to share with the community. I took it upon myself to come up with a potential timeline of our process as a council. And I made copies for everyone. You guys can all look at it because we talked about I really based this off of the early voting deadline in October. And I looked to work back to the filing deadline and the markers that we want to hit and what we need to accomplish to really inform the electorate of what the issue is in a balanced, neutral way. So I put it all down, going with even suggestions for when the town halls that we are speaking about, if the kind of the events will line up. And I think that we can do it. It's going to take some effort and some hard work and some cooperation and collaboration, but I think that we could get through the process. So I know I'm kind of throwing this at you guys right now. I just developed it. I'd like you to read it over, thoughts. I don't have to go through every line with everybody because I know we're on a time crunch this evening, but how you guys feel about it and if it does look achievable, because I was very concerned.
I
last
appreciate
meeting.
that you have one town hall that's going to be not in the evening for people who can't make evening.
And I put that
That's
I tried to look at our calendar. We do have some holidays that our community will be celebrating and stuff. I tried to space them out, that we had an evening one, an afternoon one, and I threw the afternoon one might be appropriate on a weekend that we could and that some of those times I can't take credit for it. It was off of what Jim had suggested in this document. But I came up with kind of the week of suggestions. So, and then a couple other issues that I think that if we are potentially moving forward with this, when we're the postage for the mailing, what this is going to look like, some of that. And I don't know if that's done on the back end or if this is done us as a group working together, what that process would be. But
Well,
any thoughts?
I really appreciate this because if any of you know me, you know that, well, first of all, that the concept of getting this in before early voting was a little bit daunting to me, and seeing this on paper makes me feel better. It's work. I mean, it's going to be a busy few months, but seeing this makes me feel a lot better, and seeing it organized just is the kind of thing I enjoy seeing. And I'm glad someone else did it, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I mean, this is very helpful to me.
I
I
guess
think-
the question I
Sure.
have, Jim, is, I know we said minimum of 2 town hall meetings. How will we determine whether the third meeting is necessary? What's the criteria for that?
It may be, just by the experience of the town hall meetings, we'll be able to see how many people come out, what the questions are, and if we keep getting a lot of repetitive questions, it might indicate that we've gotten a lot of the information out.
I think that this goes to Melanie's kind of bubble you brought up last meeting, which was an interesting perspective. As people get this information, I project that we will need 3 of those. Just like our council meetings, that we've had different members of the community coming and asking questions. I think that we're going to continue to see that rolling out, or somebody has extra questions that they want another space to come to the city about.
And my experience has been that it's very hard to know who will show up for what meeting. We don't know all the community schedules. We don't know all the school schedules. You might have a better feel for it, but not every building. So it's really hard. Sometimes you have to err on the side of just holding something like this. And if nobody shows up, or only a few people show up, you end early. And it's a short meeting, but you just do it because it's the right thing to do. It gives more opportunities for people to come and ask questions. That's my personal viewpoint, because you really also, the same point, and I appreciate that. I've had a few more experiences talking to friends, very well-informed people who had no idea that this was going on. And, you know, we're very involved and we're engaged. These are people who are also engaged, but perhaps in other things. And so I just think that it's, you know, err on the side of doing more.
Can I share, by the way, speaking of conversation, I want to share a conversation I had with a resident who has lived on Lander for 22 years, asking about the sidewalks. And I said, well, we're trying to figure out when this is going to go on the ballot. And I said, the concern is, can we get the information out quickly enough? And she said, well, you know, we have instantaneous electronic communication these days. I said, yes, but there are also people who don't use that. And some the council members are concerned that the post office might be a little bit too slow. And her response is, post office isn't that slow. And I think she's absolutely right about those things. I'm very confident that we can get the word out. As you know, I said this the last meeting we had. And yes, it's a lot of work, but you guys have already gotten a lot of that done. I know Don's been on it for a long time, especially the level that people are of information that people are going to have to make a well-based decision. So that's just my thought about it.
Okay. Well, I think it's great, and thank you, Emmy, for, broadly, not specifically sketching out some ideas here that we can deal with. I think the most important thing is, we're in August, so whether or not we don't have to adopt this right now, but even the schedule that you lay out in August shows,
We gotta.
this is like, as we talk about this over the next couple of meetings, this is very doable, it seems
Yeah,
to me.
and I think this fits, and since it sounds like we have general consensus on the direction of this, we could finish this at the next council meeting, worst, the following council meeting, and have it ready to go for production to be mailed. So I think this is great, Emmy. I love it.
Thanks.
And I think it meshes, since we've got consensus on this, it kind of meshes with it. And I think it's doable now.
Yeah, I do too. Let's turn our attention to, because we have a half hour left in this meeting, to the ordinance and kick off any further discussion regarding it and that language in it. Because to be honest, guys, at this point of the conversation, my sense is that council is getting itself comfortable with the idea of this being on the November ballot. So again, and you'll speak up obviously if I'm misinterpreting that for many of you, but let's turn and see if we can either get consensus or what do you want to do with this
So,
ballot language as it sits?
your hand is up. Kathy, you go.
I just had a question. Do we want to delineate Shaker, South Woodland, Lander Road, or should we say major roads as, because in the future, if we decide to add to Fairmount or Brainerd or things like that, do we then put it up to ballot again? Or should we just say major roads rather than, because Chagrin was originally on the original document, but it's not on here. I mean,
Let me build on that comment. So I had the same concern, and so I know this is advisory, but I would take out, to answer that in part, the fourth whereas clause, the city finds that the question should be decided by the voters. I think that's covered up above. We say this is an advisory election. So it's advisory to us and right there in the ordinance. But I'm worried the next one would go to your point, Kathy, that it says we've decided that they're going to determine, I don't know, it just sounds more, we're locking ourselves in. And I think the mayor has commented before that council has this authority to do this. And what we're doing this for is to take the advice of the voters and see how strong the support is, but not locking ourselves into every time we want to do a little extension, we have to go back to the voters for that. But
Jim, I just missed what, you're talking
so in
about
the fourth,
section,
in the fourth whereas,
oh, in the whereas.
yeah,
It's the third, right? Or the fourth?
it's the fourth
Oh,
whereas.
fourth, okay.
Oh,
So
we can just say eliminate that so it keeps it.
Right,
Is it
I
on
was
the-
just going to limit, because up above it already covers it.
Covers it.
Council finds it, determines it should be an advisory election on the question.
Yeah.
So I think you've got it covered, and I don't think you need to repeat it, make it sound like you're going to, for all time, determine that the voters should do this.
Read
I
that, read
could
that
see
clause
that.
because
That
I'm
makes
not
sense
sure
to
which
me.
version.
That can go.
That clause says, council finds it determines that this question should be decided by the voters of Pepper Pike before more time and money are spent on this issue. Well, we're going to spend more time. I don't know about more money, but I'm going to spend more time for sure.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you're
just don't
saying
think
to
we, I
eliminate
don't think
that?
we need it. The paragraph above,
I agree.
Covers it.
yeah.
More
Yeah, I
succinct,
think that's fine.
more
So strike
succinct.
that. Good, because I had a question about that time and
Thomas
money. but-
Jefferson,
Yeah.
you mind? You get it?
It works.
Okay.
And then-
As we're cutting.
And then I would be, because of my concern over recreational trails, and there may be, again, for the voter who is oblivious to all of this, and there's going to be voters who are oblivious, who don't answer their mail, don't read the emails. I would like to be more descriptive in the ordinance language itself to describe what these are, including adding 5-foot wide concrete recreational trails, also known as sidewalks, in a parenthetical or something to that effect, so that the voter who walks in and knows nothing doesn't think this is the 10-foot wide asphalt path that's going to be put in Gates Mills, because the word trails is used there too, and it may really confuse the voter. And so I'd like to add
The
that.
5 foot doesn't concern me. What do you think about throwing that word sidewalks in there? Given the conversation we had.
Can you
at the
say
beginning.
something like in lay language or non-legal ways? No.
We're calling them recreational trails for a reason. The more you use the word sidewalks, the less value there is to say these are recreational trails.
But there's no way to, I agree with Jim on this one, because if you don't know this, you might be confused. You can't make a reference
But
to.
you could say, 5-foot concrete recreational trails.
That some people may call sidewalks.
Well,
This is advisory, and we're free to write this ballot language that's, as long as it's not confusing, and this, I think, makes it less confusing, have a reference.
that's right. It's your call.
Okay.
Ultimately, the ballot language is actually prepared by the Secretary of State. So we're advisory to them
Right.
about what we think a fair characterization
Yeah.
of this is.
Okay, well, to the point that this is advisory to council and not the enabling legislation or the enacting legislation of what we're actually building. we could actually, I'm not suggesting we should, I think we should call it recreational trails, maybe with the parenthetical. But even if we were called it sidewalks, which I don't advise, that doesn't really read to what we're finally going to call it when we adopt some program, right?
And I will say, I just went back to reference the community survey. We call them sidewalks all throughout that, which I realize is different than our legislation, but we have used that term
Yeah.
in other findings. That how do we make it consistent? I have it up here. So
Okay, well, let's look for a minute
Yeah.
at what we could use to make this
I
clear.
I think if you just put 5-foot wide concrete recreational trails, sidewalks, close paren. And again, I go to your point, Rick. I think when we pass the enabling legislation, it says, we hereby pass this legislation designating these things on these roads as this.
That's what counts.
That's what counts.
Yeah.
This is an advisory.
We say similar to a sidewalk in Paren rather than calling it a sidewalk.
Well, I would say sidewalks, and that way it's,
Steve, it's
Similar to.
give us legal
But-
clarification. Is that
they're
true?
exactly the same.
I know.
Similar.
I think when the process is done, the legislation that gets passed that addresses maintenance of them and, responsibility for care is going to solve the legal issue.
Okay.
And, it's a advisory election. You should put on the advisory election what you want to be advised about.
Right.
And in language that you think is
Yeah.
clear enough for you.
I think
So-
we're okay.
So the question is, if we put the word sidewalks in this, does this jeopardize the protections that,
I don't think so.
okay, so then put it in.
Then let's go for it.
yeah, I think it should be added then.
So we could, do you want to say recreational trails, sidewalks? And I think is the way to do it. And if we got consensus, and then I would say 5-foot wide concrete recreational trails, sidewalks. And then I would add, design, constructed, maintained by the city in the right of way. And I would add on one side of, unless people think that's too specific, but again, I'm trying to get the sense we're planning on one side of these major roads, not on both sides. And I don't know if, I think, again, that's just informative to the voter who, for whatever reason, is completely oblivious. You didn't get our mailing and just walks in, they'll have a better sense of what's in store here.
Well, it says in the rights of way already.
But what the voter will only see, do they get the entire language? We just see the
They're gonna see the
box,
box.
right?
They get what's in that's on the ballot.
Right. So I think that probably one of the more important, it's all important. But the more important is like what the voter is actually going to see on their ballot.
Yeah, so make these changes to the box. And then
To the box? Okay, I wasn't sure where you were at.
yeah. That's what I
Okay.
intend.
That's a good point, because unless,
But it's both places, actually, just because the title of the legislation should be
Sure, but
consistent.
this is more of a question.
oh,
This
in
is
the
a question,
title.
this is like the ordinance is a statement versus the question of the actual ballot language. So I just want to make sure we're,
For the
put it
person,
where we
for the
need to.
person who just walks in cold and doesn't know, that's the more important language, is your point.
yeah, like that is the
That is the only language.
most,
That's
but
the only
it's all
language they
very
will see.
important. I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't
Right.
want to get too crazy here, but I think that people are going to vote on the concept,
Right.
no matter how much we wordsmith this.
That's right.
And that we should try to come to a conclusion within the next 20 minutes rather than shredding and
Well-
redoing all of these words.
I-
People are going to
I
vote
would
on the
support that.
concept.
And the reality is, the more detail we wordsmith into this, the less likely it's going to be
Understood.
approved as written by the Secretary of State or
Mhm.
whatever authorities are adopting
So-
the ballot language.
So, but then, okay, but even in the box, are we good with 5-foot wide concrete recreational trails, sidewalks? And then
Yeah.
leave everything else the same, in the
Yeah.
right of way of, in the right of way.
Within,
Rights of way.
Rights of way. Yeah.
Right.
There's more than one.
Mhm.
Does everyone,
So right now, it says in the right, so I'm fine up to there, I think. And pending council's advice. But we also have Shaker, South Woodland Lander that Kathy had suggested. Do we get rid of that and just say major roads or
I
not?
wouldn't do that.
I think
I
that
don't
the
know.
street names need to be on there. That is what we've been discussing
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
time. I, like, personally, I think that it's very important that we label which streets those are, just
Yeah,
as to how we got here.
and don't leave it, people living on Creekside saying, well, am I on a major road?
Yeah, I think that it
Right.
spells out for the community, again, perhaps the uninformed,
Plus.
exactly
the-
where
The
that
intent of
is.
this is, as we've said, this is kind of the ultimate survey and just to find out what people think about these things. And what happens after that, we determine.
And that would be some years down the road, and we could address that at that time.
Right. And if it gets approved, it gets built out, maybe that council would feel more comfortable with, addressing it. I'm not saying that we need to go have future elections every time we want to go
No.
build something. But, so I think we just stay with the three streets.
And I do appreciate that it says funded without raising additional taxes instead of the previous language, which I think was surplus, because I did have some concerns about
Yeah.
the picture that it painted more globally about the city's finances, and I think we have to be prepared to speak to that, because I think there might be a belief that we have more limitless amount, like a limitless amount of money almost, but which isn't true, obviously. And we are being very thoughtful in, whether we do this, how we do it. And, there might be other projects along the way. We've had, septic projects, we'll have other projects. So, that I don't want to give the impression that the city is just awash in money for all time, I guess.
Which was, oh, I'm sorry, go
There
ahead.
could be a bad economy, for example, in 5 or 10 years, and we want to be prepared to have the community understand the balance, the normal balance of life.
We've had repeated questions about whether homeowners would pay for this. And I guess the question directly, the people in front of you, because in other cities, the homeowners are actually obliged to maintain and
assessment.
repair and, right.
It's an assessment, yeah.
So when we say without raising additional taxes, does that, for those homeowners, again, who are uninformed, does that answer that question that they're not going to be, quote, assessed for a sidewalk?
What if we say can be funded by the city without raising additional? Capital C city.
Because it is and it is taxpayer money, obviously.
Yeah, but they're not being assessed
Yeah, yeah.
for it and that sort of, I think
We
that
will cover
answers that
that.
question.
We'll
What
cover
I was-
that in our town halls.
Yes, I was
Oh,
really,
sure.
I was really primarily saying that we might want to be prepared to speak to that
Mhm.
in the town hall.
But if you added after taxes, just to pin that one down, and I'm on the fence about this one, and assessments, without any taxes or assessments, would that answer that question and I'm thinking about the people on Shaker who just got assessed for the new sewer, and maybe that's in the air, and they're thinking, wait, am I going to be assessed for this? And the answer is no. But so
I think by the city ought to go after the word funded.
right, I agree.
okay.
Without raising additional taxes or assessments? Is that what you want to
Th-
add?
That's what I was, if we need to, I don't want to make it further confusing, but if we need to, just so someone.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could add the word assessments.
I'm
Right.
okay with that.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm okay with that.
So, but this doesn't lock us into anything, and if.
it's advisory.
Let's say sidewalks, gotta have them, no matter what, and people are willing to do assessments, we can do that down the road.
on the
All in
top-
favor of
Not
assessments.
not
raise your hand.
anticipating, that we're- not anticipating that we're going to do that,
No, we're
but,
not.
the economy
Funded by the
changes
city,
and things happen.
On the top of the box, I just had a question. Proposed recreational trails, it has a quote on one side, but not the other. And then do we need to put a major affirmative vote is necessary for passage? Or can we
Yeah.
just say, shall the city of Pepper Pike?
It's required.
It's required. Okay.
And the quote is at the
At
end
the
of
very
the
end.
box.
Oh, I see it now.
The whole thing is
All
a
right,
quote.
I see it. Whole thing's a-
So do we need the word, so without additional, just, do we need the word raising? Just say without additional taxes or assessments?
Okay.
So I had one other question, and it was actually brought to me by somebody else. Would there be cause to put a projected maximum or a cost not to exceed or anything like that within the language, or no?
No.
I don't want to, I don't want to not look at something that we should be.
It's advisory for one, and then
Okay.
two.
Okay, that's fine.
I do think we obviously have the, normal understanding that if something was extraordinarily expensive, we would have to
If
look
we
at
can't
it
afford
again.
it.
Yeah.
If we can't afford it, we
Yeah,
can't
I
afford
mean,
it.
Of course, I said, we're gonna be
It's the
approving this
obvious-
phase by
it's the
phase
obvious
anyway.
understanding, but that's
It's
part
one
of-
phase at a time. We're not eating the whole
True.
elephant. That's
True.
But I think
Okay.
that's something we, again, need to be prepared to talk about at a town hall, possibly just at a future time.
Right. Okay.
I applaud Tony's goal of getting this done tonight if we can.
All right, so what I would suggest now is, are we ready for the law director to read the language as it exists
In the box.
in the box? So we know what it is we would be voting on.
Shall the city of Pembroke design, construct, and maintain 5-foot wide concrete trails, recreational trails, sidewalks in parentheses, in the rights of way of Shaker Boulevard, South Woodland Road, and Lander Road, provided that such design, construction, and maintenance can be funded by the city without raising additional taxes or assessments.
You take out the word raising?
Yeah, that's fine.
And that changes the title also, I think it. Or is that staying the same? Let me just find that.
What, proposed recreational trail?
I think title could remain the way it is.
Okay.
I think
Then
that could
should we
remain.
put the word
No need
streets
to
in
make
the
that any
title?
longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we put
I think that
streets
should be-
in the paren in the title was Sheila's
Oh,
question.
no, don't listen to me. It makes sense.
Yeah, it was a question.
You mean proposed recreational trails,
Paren
parentheses,
streets.
sidewalks?
Sidewalks, I meant, yeah.
It would be, there's no
Yeah.
downside to doing
No,
it.
I say go for that. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add that too.
In parallel changing on page 1 to the top.
Okay, so other than what Steve just read, the only additional change would be the word sidewalks in parentheses after, in the title, recreational trails.
And then take out the fourth whereas, right?
Mhm.
And I think Mayor Jim said that also this title of the ordinance at the top should mirror the same language from the box.
With the sidewalk
Without
parentheses.
additional
Yeah.
taxes
Yeah,
or assessments.
And
Yes.
taxes and all of that. I mean, it should be exactly the same.
yeah, agree.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, and the third whereas clause has the language regarding without additional taxes or assessments.
okay.
Okay.
So it's my understanding that in order to accomplish this evening, we would first have to suspend, then have a motion to amend the ordinance as we've described, and then a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Right.
Is that
It's a
correct?
motion to adopt and then the motion to amend, but we can administratively say this is what's in front of council now.
Okay.
Okay.
We can administratively say.
If
that.
anybody
I like that.
objects, we can take a formal motion, but with the unanimous consent of the legislative body, you can get there
Okay.
So
quickly.
do we need a
Any
motion to
objection?
suspend?
Yes.
I'll move that.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call on suspension.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Zatron?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
I don't like motions to
I
suspend,
don't
but
either.
yes.
Mr. Daga?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wellman?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we would need, as administratively amended, a motion to adopt the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Zatron?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Mr. Daga?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wellman?
Yes.
All right. We are on the ballot, ladies and gentlemen.
See, when the meeting is about to end in 10 minutes, things get done.
To Scott's point, people work under deadlines.
We still are going to meetings.
Yeah, can we still meet tomorrow night?
You can
I'd
do,
like everybody
you
here.
can do whatever you want.
We are going to, that said, we are going to cancel tomorrow night's special meeting. Sheila will get a notice out to that effect. And I don't believe there is any further matters before council this evening. And we will stand adjourned.
We'll get
The
a
planning commission meeting will start in 8 minutes.
We get a clean copy.
We'll get a clean. Never, even if I especially ask, please.
Yes.
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
I mean, thanks for doing that.